Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer at Geek Vibes Nation, and I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dylan Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Attic new release Roundup. If you're new here, well, first of all, welcome. What we do here is we go back and forth and we talk about the latest home video releases. And just have a fun time discussing those and kind of putting you on to some movies that you might not otherwise have discovered. So that's kind of what's fun about this. And with that, we don't have any giveaways this week, but I'm going to kick it off with a pretty fun title that I had never really even heard of. And I'm really excited to get into. And that is called Programmed to Kill from Kino Studio Classics. And
Seems cheesy.
oh, it's very cheesy. And slipcover.
Mm-hmm.
And this does have reversible cover art. So
oh yeah, that screams 80s.
Yeah. So I'm gonna kick this off with a question.
Okay.
Do you like blockbuster ripoffs? Like,
Absolutely. Let's
then
go for it.
you, my friend, will like this one. So this is basically a Terminator ripoff, but what's really interesting is it predates another movie that kind of has a similar setup, which is Universal Soldier.
Yeah, John Van Damme.
Yeah. So basically it is a female terrorist who is we kind of round her up and we pre-program her to be like an assassin for the US. Yet she is uncontrollable, and
Of
mayhem
course.
ensues. So this is very ultra cheesy, as I mentioned. It is that kind of sweet spot of great action, violence, and it's also so bad it's enjoyable. The plot is pretty standard, yet the movie feels partly in on its own joke. And I think that's kind of what helps it really allow you to get into it and have fun with the premise. I also have to give this film a lot of credit for having its own style, and I really wasn't expecting this to be as atmospheric as it was, and I really appreciate that. Oddly enough, there is another, and in my opinion, better female Terminator ripoff called Lady Terminator, which if you haven't seen that, drop whatever you're doing, try to get a copy of it. My fingers crossed that we get like a Blu-ray this year. But it's great. It's a very insane Terminator remake that has like mystic elements into it, which is fun. But this is pretty good too. The commentary track's a lot of fun. And I do like how they do have an interview with the screenwriter Robert Short. So this is the whole package. Like, it's great looking. This is from a new 2K scan from the original 35 inner positives, and it looks great. It's not what I would say 100% pristine, but it still looks very nice. Like the colors really pop. Again, this movie has a very unique kind of style, and I think this new transfer like really highlights that. So it's a lot of fun. I think you can tell from the cover if this is going to be your jam or not. And I really think it's a fun discovery, and I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that one out. I watched another kind of Terminator ripoff slash whatever transfers that I talked about a few months ago, which I wasn't in love with the release, but the movie was fine. So I want to see how that transfer stacks up against other ripoffs. So like we'll see how this new one fares. But I do like that it's like a woman at the lead, so that's cool. So that's a fun twist on things. So yeah, I'm excited. Heading into my first title, this one is actually good. It's not ironically good like Program to Kill. It is the new, I believe it's the 30th anniversary 4K Ultra HD release of Groundhog Day. Yes, the Bill Murray classic. One of his last collaborations with Harold Ramis during their prime. Let me just show this off a little bit. So this has been released on 4K before. Here's just kind of the J card, and can kind of see all the special features and everything, which I'll talk about in a second. So you have this steelbook front. Here's the back with the groundhog, Phil. And here I'll show. So I'll carefully take out these discs. So here is the 4K disc here. And I'm only doing this because there is some internal art and I want to show that off. So here is the Blu-ray disc. And here is the internal art here. So yeah. Some companies choose just to go with a solid color, but I always like when they put a little bit of extra effort in and put like a image or something just to make it a little bit more interesting. So this is a like a stacked disc release here. This was previously released on 4K, probably for its 25th anniversary, so 5 years ago. What is different with this release is they included Dolby Vision this time. That's a lot what Sony's been doing a lot recently is they've been going back to a lot of their early 4K titles where they weren't really putting Dolby Vision on a lot of stuff. Probably not until like the last 2 or 3 years, honestly, because there's some more re-releases coming up in a few months that were put out in 2020, and it's just like, oh, they finally decided like somewhere near the end of 2020 that they needed to start adding Dolby Vision. So look out. I think probably both of us will be talking about like Air Force One and Mask of Zorro here in a few months, but that's for a later discussion. That's a tease. But this one, so you have that, but you also have the added edition. It carries over the previous Dolby Atmos audio, but you also get the 5.1 soundtrack and the original 2.0 stereo soundtrack. So you get the original audio on this one, which was not on the original 4K as well. So there are no additional special features besides maybe like exclusive to this release. Besides, I think maybe the theatrical trailer is new to this, but everything that was on the Blu-ray disc is included on the Blu-ray disc as well. Just like legacy special features, like a making of documentary. Different featurettes about like the groundhog and just like the score and all that type of stuff. So I'll jump back to the movie. I don't think there's a lot I can say about the movie because Groundhog Day is just kind of like a shorthand for any time loop film, just because it kind of set the standard of like people knowing what a time loop film is. But for those who don't know, Bill Murray, he plays a kind of hotshot weatherman who's just kind of over where he's at in his life. He's about to move on to a different news station. He goes on kind of like one almost like last assignment to cover the Groundhog Day festivities in this town. An unexpected blizzard, which he did not predict to come in, comes in, makes him snowed in, and he wakes up and he starts experiencing the same day over and over. And he has to kind of like figure out what he's doing and what like he, of course, like I said, this kind of sets the standard for time loop films. He gets to like kind of live out each day, figure out his limits, gets to do some fun things, just like get into fights, do things, get into trouble and not have any repercussions until, of course, you got to start learning more about yourself and why you're there. And then you also have Andy McDowell there as kind of a love interest that he's trying to build a rapport with, or originally just trying to sleep with, but just falls in love, that kind of stuff. So just him, it's what I like about this compared to other kind of like Ramis and Murray collaborations is this one's a lot more heartfelt than a lot of their previous releases. So like, yes, I love Ghostbusters as much as the next person, but I love like kind of the heart at the middle of this, and just like seeing this character grow. Like it's, in my opinion, it's like a better version of like It's a Wonderful Life, almost, just because like just seeing this character who is just kind of like not the best, not really taking life. He's kind of taking life for granted, but then he's kind of like seeing kind of what he's kind of been overlooking and just like how like what could benefit him from being a better person and all that. So it has like a really nice emotional center and it's super hilarious too. So really enjoyed this movie. And this 4K release, I will preface, I do not have the previous 4K release. Everything I've heard is like it is like a reference quality disc, and people say it's one of the best 4K discs. I can only imagine that this is probably just like incrementally better with the addition of Dolby Vision. But as I do not have that previous release, I can only guess. But this looks amazing. The Atmos sounds great. The original like audio also sounds great. So I like having that choice between the two formats. And then you also get it in a nice steelbook release. So while this is not bringing like a ton of new special features like some like Sony re-releases or anything like that, or like cleaning up like some bad encodes of some other thing. By all accounts, this was a good 4K disc to begin with, but if you don't have it yet, I think this is probably the ideal way to own it. If you have the previous 4K release, I guess if you're a Steelbook fan or if you just love the incremental improvements of Dolby Vision, maybe it's worth it for you. Maybe it's not. Personal choice. But overall, for those who just want this movie in the best format possible, this new 4K release is really great. And I'm excited to watch it again once Groundhog Day comes around next month. So perfectly timed for me. Very excited.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I feel like I've only seen that movie like once, so I think it's probably a good time to revisit that.
Yes.
So my next title has there's no really great segue. It is a release from our friends at Mondo Macabro, and that is In the Folds of the Flesh. And
even that title sounds dirty.
yeah, we definitely, so for our longtime watchers and some of our new ones, we have this running thing where we trade kind of sexy titles or like some stuff that's a little risque. So I guess this one's mine. And as you can see, there's some, it's definitely very racy. So there is no reversible art. That's the inside. So yeah, kind of like my last film. If you like the cover art, I think that's a pretty good indicator. If you're gonna like this title, I will say that in the first maybe 5 minutes of the movie, there's a decapitation, a police chase, a lot of grime. There's just a lot going on. Indeed, if you're a fan of sleazy Euro trash, I think you will really enjoy this. This is one of those films that kind of likes to poke you with just about every kind of taboo you can think of. And it's also kind of one of those movies that the plot doesn't really get in the way of the story, meaning a really meaningful narrative kind of takes a backseat to a kaleidoscope of gore, nudity, incest, and it's so overwrought that I think it would make Tennessee Williams blush. So it really just has it all. I I'm
You
a
just
little
really sold some people on this.
What's that?
You just really sold some people on this. They're like, oh, okay, cool.
I mean, it is a really fun movie. It's one of those that it definitely kind of grew out of that like psycho like the post psycho, like the more psychologically like driven movies, but this is very sleazy though. It tries to do something I think kind of interesting, but it definitely is just kind of ridiculous, but it's so over the top it's a lot of fun. This has a documentary featurette, and this comes from a new 2K transfer, and I really love that one We get a really nice looking picture. This again isn't pristine, but for a movie that's from the early 70s, it looks like the material was taken relatively good care of. So we get a nice looking clear transfer. And again, with a lot of Mondo titles, we get some kind of like documentary or featurette that helps you kind of like put the film into a historical kind of context, which is nice. I mean, especially for a nice sleazy Euro trashy kind of film. So yeah, if this cover kind of grabs you, and if you feel like that is something right up your alley, then I think you won't be disappointed. It's wonderfully weird. There is some kind of interesting twists that maybe don't quite work, but I still applaud the effort. So I think it's definitely worth checking out.
Interesting. Yeah. I'll hesitant be very hesitant about checking that one out, but I may just do that just for your recommendation. I'll see, maybe. Heading into my next title, it is a brand new movie. This was just released around Halloween. This is from Lionsgate, and this is Pray for the Devil. Just a very straightforward title. I don't think you'll be confused about what this is about. But this is in 4K, which is pretty cool. So you get here, just same stuff, and then 4K and Blu-ray disc here. That does come with a digital copy. That is not in there. Same with Groundhog Day. It also came with a digital copy. But so this one, I did not have high expectations, but just because I'd seen kind of like the Rotten Tomatoes score and really hadn't even seen anyone like on my Twitter timeline or anyone like actually see it. It just kind of seemed like a movie that like had come out and just kind of like disappeared. But here it is getting a 4K release, so I guess someone was clamoring for it. But I wanted to like this movie more than I did. I don't think it's a train wreck, but it is underwhelming compared to what it kind of like sets up. And I think it could have been improved in like kind of small but meaningful ways for me. So Pray for the Devil it takes an interesting, like, of course, it's a possession movie. You can kind of tell from the title. But what I really liked about this one is it is kind of set, it kind of gives you like the opening title cards about like the history of like exorcisms and like how pretty much it's only been left to the dominion of like priests, and like nuns can like help in like a supportive capacity and like prayer and stuff. But like basically this is a dominion of man, and like women just kind of had to stay on the sidelines. But what this film kind of like introduces is there's a young nun who is kind of interested in getting into like learning about like possessions and exorcisms, and like how that might like how she could possibly get into the like that. But of course she's a woman, so like everyone's just like, no, this is not a nun can't do this. It is not allowed by the church. It's not sanctioned by the church. Until there's like this one case of a potential possession of like a young girl that she kind of like kind of forms like a bond with this young girl, and it's just kind of gets herself into a situation where there is a authority within this like kind of school that's like training priests that are just kind of like, okay, we'll let her observe type of thing. So it's kind of like opening the door for a woman to be like possibly lead an exorcism. So I think that's an interesting take on the exorcism genre, because yeah, it is male dominated because it has to be priest. But just that you have this young nun, she has her own kind of like baggage and tragedies in her past, which you kind of learn about throughout the movie, and you just kind of get flashes of it. But so I dug that part. Where it kind of falls apart ultimately, in my opinion, is a couple ways. The lack of ambiguity with the like actual like possessions. of like, are these people actually possessed? Are they like mentally unwell? You don't really get a lot of that. It is more so just like, this is the devil. This is it. So it's just kind of like straightforward, like they are possessed, and you're just like, okay. So there's that, but then there's also the possession itself. I kind of talk about this a lot, and it kind of bugs me, but just like I miss the days of practical effects. It just really bugs me because like there is a special featurette on this that shows the digital effects, but like I did not need to see it because I could see the digital effects on the screen as they were happening. Like certain like different like running up the wall, or like a girl like contorting herself backwards. Like back in the day, you would get like a contortionist who could do like weird, odd things, but no, you just have like a computer just makes it look like a girl is like bending her spine backwards and stuff, and you're just like, oh, that looks fake as hell, honestly. And it just kind of bothers me. It just happens over and over, and it just takes me out of the movie. And then overall, like the narrative doesn't compensate for this by being like doing anything with the concept that like kind of intrigued me from the beginning. They just kind of like go down the more standard possession route with like a little bit of personal tragedy, and then they kind of like shoehorn in some like connective tissue, which didn't really work well with me. So overall, there's some things I do appreciate about this movie. It's not a complete train wreck, like I said, but it just kind of too much just did not come together. And just like I said, I wish movies would use more practical effects these days. It just really bothers me, and it just did not work for me. But I if you're like a person who just like watches every possession movie and stuff, you might enjoy just kind of the novelty of some of the plot elements. But like, this isn't like a standout in the genre by any means. It's just like fine. If you're really hard up for horror, go for it. But this 4K looks really great. I really like it. Has Dolby Vision. It also comes with Dolby Atmos audio, which sounds fantastic. It's very unnerving to have like all these like creepy sounds up above you and just all around. It's just like perfect. Really great presentation. This is also loaded with special features, like much more than I typically expect. Lionsgate's sometimes better about this than most, but even them, they're going kind of above and beyond. There's an audio commentary. There's a 42-minute featurette with like cast and crews talking about the movies and being interviewed and everything. There's another featurette about the score. There is a 2-hour virtual cast read like before the movie was made, of just like the cast and people getting together for a virtual table read, which is really cool. It's just like an unusual featurette that I like. And then there's also an hour-long kind of featurette with like some real life experts about like just the possession as a concept, which it just kind of seems like something you'd more so find like on a boutique release. I'm just like, oh, they're really packing this with special features. So for such a movie that I just kind of floated into the ether, this is a really great release. It's just like I wish the movie was better to like compensate for that. But if you're interested, it's a really, really great release. But the movie itself, it's all right.
Yeah, I have not seen that yet, so I might just wait to maybe rent it, or if it's streaming sometime. But my next title was also kind of meh, and that is the Grandmaster of Kung Fu. I really like Kung Fu movies, but yeah. So I will say that there it's some good and some bad. So I will say that I think kind of the biggest problem with Grandmaster is it's only 75 minutes long, but it feels so much longer than that. And it's a shame because it's kind of bogged down in this underwhelming narrative, where I can kind of see where they're going with it. And there's some really interesting like politics going on, but it's not as developed as it could be. And I didn't find any of the characters really that compelling. And I also just kind of wanted a fun sort of kung fu movie, and it gets a little bit self-serious, and that's not always a problem, but I think you really have to bring your A game if you're gonna like go like super earnest with a movie. And I think overall it kind of feels like a patchwork of other better kung fu films just sort of stitched together. Having said that, I will say that I really appreciated how wonderfully shot this movie is. It looks really great. Visually it doesn't pop as much as I would like maybe want it to, but I could definitely tell that there was a lot of care put in crafting like shot compositions and just the overall like look and feel of the film. Um and of course the action scenes I think are certainly like the better parts of this movie. Whenever it's just pure action and fighting, it's a lot of fun. It is a little bit messy for people that like a lot of gore. It's not quite over the top, but it is a little bit um like bloody and stuff. I think one of the problems is if you're gonna kind of go that route, I think you should really go like the super hard R route. But yeah, I think it's just indicative of this movie kind of plays it safe. This has no features. Like I said, it's only 75 minutes long. So it is a little bit boring, but I think that like for action scenes alone, it's worth it. The overall like disc looks really nice. There is no reversible art. The disc is kind of shiny though, so that's cool.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's fine. I just thought that again, the way it looked and the action scenes were like far and away the best parts of it. So if that's enough for you, then you might like it. If you're looking for something a little bit more, you will probably find it lacking.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know about that one. That's sounding a little iffy to me. I will say I've been on my own kind of kung fu journey over the past week for a title that I'll be talking about on our next episode because it's a box set. But I would just say there's probably a lot more in that I'm enjoying than I probably would with that. But that's just a tease. So I will head to my next title, and this happens to be one of my favorite movies of last year,
Mm.
and that is the new Universal release of She Said. This movie, it got like pretty decent reviews, but I don't think it's getting the love that it kind of deserves. So just a normal Blu-ray DVD combo. So this is kind of like an All the President's Men type situation slash spotlight for the Harvey Weinstein scandal. This stars Carrie Mulligan and Zoe uh, Zoe Kazan. I love her, and that bums me out that I forgot her name. Zoe Kazan, because uh, so they played two New York Times reporters who are they end up starting to kind of gather the information for like the what will become like the expose on Harvey Weinstein, and kind of like really kicks the Me Too movement into like overdrive. And what I really like about this is, yes, it is like a lot of just like these two women like tracking down sources, trying to like hear these stories, gather information, convince people to share their stories, and just and also all the while dealing with their own kind of like personal lives as well, because it shows that they're not just like two-dimensional stock characters who are like, let's move this person from this location to this location to talk to this person. It shows like how working in this kind of toxic environment and having this in their lives at all times kind of impacts their personal lives as well with their families. And it's just really great, and it's directed like pretty much perfectly by Maria Schrader, who directed the Netflix limited series Unorthodox, which I highly recommend. Um, but so yeah, this is more so just like a straightforward kind of procedural drama. But just the acting is impeccable. I love these two women, but also you have like Patricia Clarkson in like kind of like a mentor boss type role. You also have Andre Brower, who is kind of like working in and also that type of role, just kind of like the senior editor type role. But then there's also like small roles like Samantha Morton as a kind of like a survivor who's kind of more like on the pissed off side instead of like the broken side of just like she's pissed off that she hasn't like no one's ever really done anything with the stories that she's wanted to tell, and she's kind of jaded because she doesn't feel like if she says her story again that anything would even happen. But there's just all these like different little small parts about of this movie that add up into like this really riveting tale, which if you love journalism movies, I think you'll love this. I love this. I talked about this for like a literal hour with my wife the other night of just like breaking down the movie. So I'm not going to force our audience to like listen to that, but I would just say like I really love this movie and like how they approach the subject matter and just make. I really like that they make a subject like about like exposing like sexual harassment seem like it like giving it the importance that it deserves and making it feel like giving it the dramatic stakes that you want to see on screen and make you feel like leaning in and riveted and like praying that these women get like how it ends up, that Harvey Weinstein gets exposed and like goes to jail and everything, but just like this movie is so good about getting you invested and like making you wonder like are they going to do it, which I think is a great thing about movies, like they can still do that even when you know what the ending is. So yeah, love this movie so much. This Blu-ray looks really good, it sounds really good. Kind of wish it got a 4K, but beggars can't be choosers. I'm glad I got a Blu-ray release. It does come with a like a one kind of supplemental feature called Breaking the Story, which just kind of goes in briefly with like interviews with the cast and crew about telling the story and like the journey to the screen and everything. But I'm just glad to own it. Really excited to rewatch it again because, like I said, it's really great. I think you should check it out. If you're skeptical, wondering like, is the subject matter for me? It is on Peacock right now, so you can like sample it before you buy it. But I recommend getting it. But just check it out. It's a really great drama.
Yeah, that's another one that I need to see. I know I do really like journalist films. I know the last one that's kind of like that that I really liked a lot was Spotlight. So if I'm assuming you've seen that one too.
Oh yeah, I love Spotlight.
Yeah.
I controversial, but I probably say I like this more than Spotlight. But
Okay.
that's just
I am even more intrigued now. So my next title is one that is kind of weird because um well, I'll get into it. It's called The Great Kidnapping. And there's the back. So this is certainly one of those movies where like if it doesn't grab you right away, just kind of stick with it. So the plot is basically this new ambitious commissioner wages war on a series of kidnappings, which weirdly leads to him risking his career and retribution from the criminals. The premise of the Great Kidnapping is an interesting one, and I think like the film really thrives because it has a great cast. It has this great cinema verite style. But again, it takes a little while to really kick into gear. Like I would say the first 40 to 50 minutes are very procedural, very plotting, very like connecting the dots to things to kind of get you to the what I think is like some of the really fun like centerpieces of the film. And there are also some aspects that like didn't really make a lot of sense to me. Like there was kind of a subplot of a citizen downplaying and outright denying they're being shaken down for a ransom. And I don't know if that's like a cultural thing, but it was just really odd. And um like they didn't want the police involved, but they were involved anyways, because again, this commissioner's like, we have too many kidnappings. There's like a rash of kidnappings, which is kind of weird in and of itself. But it's one of those movies where you're like, okay, I guess this is how things are, so you just kind of have to go with it, even though logic is kind of dictates otherwise. But once the film really gets going, I think it's a lot of really great fun. There's a lot of high energy action scenes. There's a scene that actually really shocked me with a scene involving a kid on a bike, which I was like, wow, that's pretty hardcore. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. I've been liking like the poliziotti, like Italian
Mm.
cop dramas that like Arrow is putting out. This isn't Arrow, but like it got me in that mood, and I did quite enjoy this. There were some issues with it, but overall, I really did like it.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about with the bike kid. Like I was like, wow, that's
Yeah.
it kind of reminded me of this is a little bit of a tangent, but like there's a similar scene that's a little more cartoonish um from the original Toxic Avenger. I don't know if you've seen that one or remember that one.
I've seen parts. I think I watched a little bit and then I turned it off when I was a youth, and I just have never made it back to it.
It's a good one. You should give that another try. But anyways, yeah, and I really like the finale, and I think there was definitely some decent twists. And again, the pacing is a little bit of a was a little bit of a problem for me until it really kind of got into like the meat of the second act. But I really liked it. So there is a really nice 17-minute feature, and yeah, this movie's interesting. It's kind of got this like very Euro cool vibe to it that again, along with the cast and the style, I think made it like very compelling, even if the plot wasn't maybe great. So
Yeah, I recommend people trying it out. I was very surprised that it took like I said 45 or 50 minutes to get to the main thrust of everything, but like it is worth the journey. My next title is one that you actually covered for the site when it was released theatrically, but I'm getting around to it
mm,
on Blu-ray, and that is Burial, which I'm not sure if you remember it yet, but maybe
mm,
if me
yeah,
describing it.
I do.
So okay, yeah, I know you weren't a huge fan of it. This one, it's interesting. I think I liked it more than you did from what I remember. But so this is from IFC Films, and I'm going to be very vague because there's a thing that's pretty sure they even mention on the back, but I'm still going to be vague because within the movie they kind of keep it to like be a reveal. So if you don't read any plot synopsis, I'm not going to spoil this for you. This kind of takes place in flashback. It starts with an older woman whose house is being broken into by basically a neo-Nazi who believes that she is in possession of some information that he wants to get from her. The tables are turned, and in the course of like this neo-Nazi being imprisoned by her, she recounts the story of her youth, during World War II, and like her involvement kind of like right at the end of the fall of Hitler. So just like as the war is waning down and Hitler has just died, there are a group of soldiers which she was a part of who have to transport some very sensitive item slash package, I will just say, back to Russia, to give to Stalin, and just to kind of basically like put an end to the war. But along their journey to like take this package to Russia. They are kind of like have to guard this package and like be on the lookout. Basically, like bandits, but they're called werewolves. But like, don't think there's actual werewolves in this movie. It's just like what they are called. This is basically, it takes the almost like a historical fiction tone, a la like a Inglorious Bastards, but like nowhere near as good as that. But I did appreciate it as a drama. It's kind of like, it's pretty short, all things considered. It's about 90 minutes, so it doesn't really overstay its welcome for me. The action slash intrigue, I think, was good. Some of the characters are kind of narrowly defined and kind of like nonsensical in some ways, just like, why are you choosing to do this? That kind of thing. And I don't know, it's not a very complicated plot. It's just like, protect this package on the way to your journey, and people are going to try to stop you. And it gets kind of pulpy near the end and like a little bit, but like not overly so. Like I said, I wish this would have went more of like an Inglorious Bastards tone, because that is one of my favorite movies. But as a drama, it is fine. This is under the IFC Midnight banner, but that's more so for kind of like just kind of the action thrills. There's not really much in the way of horror elements. There's a little bit of like interesting things with like the werewolves and like the psychotropic drugs that like make people trip balls and everything. And then the only other thing that might really draw people in is that this co-stars Tom Felton, who people might know as Draco Malfoy from the Harry Potter series. But his role is like relatively smaller, but I mean, it's fine for what it is. So the movie, it's okay. Like I said, it gets like a barely passing grade for me. Like, it's fine entertainment, but if you don't watch it, I don't think you'll be greatly missing out on anything. The Blu-ray looks great, sounds good, and it has like a surprising number of there's interviews with like pretty much every cast member and the director, so you get a nice selection of interviews. You can kind of see like, here's like all the interviews that you get, which is pretty cool, because not all IFC releases come with such special features, which I will talk about with my next title. But this is a good release, and the movie is decently entertaining. I know you might not agree with me, but it's all right.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember it now that you were describing it. And yeah, I found it like weirdly like boring, I think, is what was my biggest thing, but you might like it. So
It is what it is. It's not amazing.
my next title was also kind of a mixed bag. There was a lot of like hype behind it, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect. But it is the South Park post-COVID 2 special event. And long South Park fans will know that like South Park is no stranger to doing like big episodic multi-episode kind of story arcs of varying quality. So this one was interesting because we see what like life is like 40 years after the beginning of the pandemic, and again, very much a mixed bag. So some of the good things, I think that the premise is really interesting. I really liked some of the jokes. Some of the pop culture references are really good. I love the reoccurring Blade Runner like motif of like some of the ads were like very much like Blade Runner inspired. I believe like some people even had like some of the like LED umbrellas, which was Blade Runner inspired. But for everything that's like really great and funny, they really do this thing that's annoying, which is like they'll take little like jokes and then they'll just hammer them to smithereens where it's like not even funny anymore. Like the Space Jams 2 joke just it just got so repetitive and annoying. There's some things that I really liked about it, but then I also kind of hated that they doubled down on the integrity storyline, which was pretty famously like not liked by a lot of South Park fans. But Matt and Trey were like, we don't care, we think it's funny, so we're gonna like put it in everything. And so, it's part of the special too. And it's not even really they like kind of make it out to be like sort of a big plot point, but it's like more like a MacGuffin. Um
Mm.
and that's another thing. So you can watch both parts are 1 hour long, but you can play it as like one 2 hour long thing, which is what I did. And it does not need to be that long. Like the whole thing again gets very repetitive, gets very like bogged down in its own kind of like satire. And they used to do satire like nobody else, but I think that their satire these days are a little bit hit or miss. So that's kind of how this is. A lot of people like this. I thought it was fine. I really like that we did get a nice proper like Blu-ray release. We didn't get any extras, unfortunately, but I'm just kind of happy that we did get a little something. There is some internal art that I wanted to share really quick. Um, so
Oh, nice.
yeah. Like you're not really supposed to reverse. It's not really technically reversible art, but I like how that
Yeah.
was thrown in there. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting mess. I mean, there's like other long episodic South Park stuff that I think work a little bit better. Have you seen this?
Not yet. As you were talking, I was just thinking back to I think the last one was the pandemic special, which you talked about several months ago now. But I remember watching that one and thinking that it had some good jokes, but like whenever South Park starts expanding to like hour long episodes like that are like 40 something minutes, like even that kind of feels like, ooh, this is long. Like I prefer just like the tighter like half-hour episodes and just like a natural season. So, and like you said, the integrity stuff even then was just kind of like, okay, we get it. So just knowing that that's in this one as well, just kind of like I got to get to it, but I just like I'm not super excited about it just
Yeah.
because like I said, that just sounds way too long.
Yeah, I mean, my advice is like if you absolutely have to watch it, I would split it up into 2 days. Like
Mhm.
part one and then two another day. Like I just kind of soldiered through it for the like a whole 2 hours, and it's kind of a lot, but
Yeah. Oh well, like I hope South Park does just like move past these pandemic stuff and just they can still be topical, but there's a lot in the world that they can be tackling right now that's just not specifically. Just get back to the normal seasons. That's just what I want. But oh well, fingers crossed. My next title, also from IFC Films, IFC Midnight, and that is Rubicon,
mm.
um, which is also not completely on like the like horror scale. It's more like the science fiction, and this is kind of just it's topical, of course. It is about our planet is dying, like so, like what could inspire that narratively? But yeah, our planet is dying. It is the future. These like astronauts are like on a space mission, and while these astronauts are up there, there's kind of like a main trio that it comes down to. They are taking over the space station, and basically the movie is a lot of like internal struggle about like whether the earth can be saved, whether humanity can be saved, what are their individual like choices, like, and how like basically can you doom, like should you doom the people who like may be living on earth in order to possibly make room for like a different type of future, like so kind of those moral questions that come up and just all of that. But it's fine throughout most of it. But then there are some like character leaps that I found that weren't really telegraphed, or like kind of seemed to come out of nowhere, and also kind of just got a little bit boring in some places. So this movie had a big problem with pacing and just having like a narrative that consistently grabbed you and just made you interested, because a lot of times when they were just like kind of arguing over minor moral quandaries, I was like, I don't really care at this point. Like, you're not giving me anything to really like, oh, I think you're right, or I think you're right. It's just kind of like, eh. So there's some good science fiction stuff in here, and it's done pretty well on like a smaller budget for like an indie film. Like the space work, like outside of the space station, that the few times they go out, it's done pretty well, pretty convincingly. It's not like high budget perfection, but it's good for what it is. So this movie, I mean, if the premise interests you, if you're as a science fiction person, like check it out. But overall, it's not really amazing. I wish it was better. There are no special features to liven this up. It's just like this movie in good quality. Like, glad it's on Blu-ray. Looks great, sounds good, but overall, just not the most compelling movie I've ever seen.
Hmm. Um, yeah, I had actually never heard of that one. Which sounds probably for a reason. So my next one is one that again I have very mixed feelings with. So this is a movie called Private Desert, and it is from Kino Lorber, and we do have some featurettes, well, a featurette and a trailer. No reversible art or anything. So yeah, I was very intrigued by this because this is a LGBTQ romance film, and it's basically about a very intense love affair between a disgraced cop and a person that I believe in the film identifies as trans. They kind of don't make that super clear in the film. And I think that's kind of indicative of a problem, a bigger problem that I had in this movie. But yeah, it is very long. So it is 2 hours, and I don't think it necessarily needs to be that long. My biggest thing is it doesn't really bring anything new to the subject matter that it's trying to kind of tackle. It very much almost feels like maybe like a mid 2000s movie that you know was very edgy at the time for its topics, but now it's kind of like not that groundbreaking, and again they don't really bring anything that's uh you know like just anything really meaningful, I think, to the discourse, which is a shame because I think they kind of set it up to tackle some interesting things like police brutality. And what's kind of gross about the movie is we have again a disgraced cop, but I believe it's strongly hinted at that he at least like beat up a suspect and somebody filmed it.
I think he like beat up a fellow police officer. That's what I took from it.
Oh, okay, so maybe I misunderstood, but again it's like it's almost like we're trying, like they put an obstacle in its way, which is like to forgive this guy that obviously, citizen or fellow cop, like you should be beating up on people. And I think there is a way to make that still kind of interesting, but again, it really doesn't do anything. Like there is some like nice steamy kind of scenes. It just brought nothing new to. I mean, I've seen a lot of like really good LGBTQ films, and this just feels like it really tackles everything with like the softest of gloves. Like it never really just gets into any of the minutia of like, being these characters, or particularly the, not the cop, but correct me if I'm wrong, but they never really like say how they identify, right? Like I know they dress
Yeah,
up, but that's not always indicative of being trans identifying. So
yeah, I don't think that they explicitly state one. I just know that there's kind of like trauma within the family where they don't want them to be dressing up as a woman,
yeah.
no matter how they identify. So
If I had to like pick apart your plot to like fill in the blanks, like that's not great. Like I think it had really good intentions, and I will say I really appreciated like the finale, which was kind of a very sweet, almost like saccharine sweet, but like I'll take it, because a lot of times it's unfortunate, but a lot of times with like queer cinema, people like to focus on like our pain and trauma, but we never get like happy endings. We never get to celebrate the joy. So I will say that the movie's very bleak, but there's a very like hopeful kind of ending, which I appreciated. But it's fine. Again, I just feel like it's very underdeveloped.
mhm. My main struggle with this one was the cop character, just like what they wanted the audience to take away from him, because I never really felt like he had a satisfying arc. It just kind
Mm.
of felt like it seemed like at one point just kind of like abandoned, like do you want us to care for him because he seems like an awful person, so what do you want from this? And it just, I never really cared about his aspect of the situation. The potentially trans person, like I cared about their stuff, but
Yeah.
like all the stuff with the disgraced cop, I was just like, I most pretty much don't care. So it was very much a mixed bag.
Yeah, totally agree. Like I said, it does have some things that I do appreciate. Again, I really like that ending. So if you
Mhm.
feel like that's enough for you, I would say check it out. But yeah, I just think that there's better films that tackle the subject in a more nuanced and interesting way.
For sure. Yeah. My next title is from Kino and Raro Video, and that is 100 Steps, um, which is a film that takes place over a couple of decades. And it kind of like
Hmm.
follows this kid into like young adulthood, as it kind of is in the era where especially kind of like the mafia was pretty much thriving, and just kind of had their kind of fingers in all the pots of the city, basically. I believe this takes place in Italy, but yeah, it's in the 1970s. So this is basically the tale of like 100 steps refers to the like amount of steps that he lives away from like this big mafia boss. That's just like right across the street. There's this like imposing force who has like his thumb on every part of the community. And kind of this young boy's like journey into like kind of like pushing back against what this like mobster is doing to the community. And like his dad is like friendly with this person, but also more so out of like a fear-based friendship of just like he is important, we pay deference to this person, but like you just don't mess with this person. And then this his son is just like, why do we put up with this? And it's just like starts like going on radio broadcasts and like calling out, like speaking out against him, and like trying to print like self-published newspapers to try to get other people on his side and stuff, and like putting himself into potential danger, and like putting everyone around him in danger of just like putting them like the mafia boss. He's like, he has an affection for this family, but he can only be pushed so far basically before he's just like, all right, now that's enough. You don't like stop talking about me, or there's going to be trouble. So it's that kind of narrative. And overall, I liked it. I think it's a pretty solid movie. It is potentially a little bit too long. It's an hour and 51 minutes, and it felt it. I wish it would have been like a little bit more consistently riveting, but overall, I think it is a really, it's worth a watch for sure. It's a nice piece of Italian cinema. And This comes from 2000, so it seems like it'd be older than it is, but it is just from 2000, and um, it it holds up well. It was a good discovery. I'd never heard of this before. Don't even think I'd heard of the director, Marco Tullio Giordana. But this was made well. Is pretty interesting, and like it's a really good presentation too. Like I think this is a really nice master of it. Nothing looked off or anything. This has an audio commentary by the writer and actor within the movie, and that's pretty much the only real special feature. But I always love a commentary track. So um, if you like kind of like Italian mafia dramas, this one's a pretty good one. 100 Steps, but yeah, pretty good. I enjoyed it.
Nice. Sound like it got its steps in, so that's a good thing. So my final title, I wanted it to like end this on like a really good, really incredible film, and that is Death Wish on 4K from Kino Studio Classics. And we do have a really entertaining commentary track and an interview with one of the actors, John Hertzfeld, and a trailer. So you have you seen this film?
I actually have not. I kind of shamefully I have
Ooh,
not.
yeah. Well, it's great. So this kind of is in like the vein of like Abel Ferrara's Miss 45 or Frank Henenlotter's Basket Case or Bill Lustig's Maniac, which is Death Wish features, and all those films feature like a gritty, pre-cleaned up New York City. Um, like in all of those movies, the city, I mean, it sounds cliche, but the city actually is like a character in those films and in Death Wish. So what's interesting though is like this film like takes that on a big budget, but it definitely kind of has that grimy, gritty feel. Like this is a very nihilistic action movie, and it tackles a lot of heavy subjects. Yet what's interesting is especially upon like rewatching it, it never bogs itself down in trying to really address any of the like hot button topics that it sort of like floats around. And that might sound like a missed opportunity, but I think it's kind of smart because um it's there. Those topics are there for texture, but like we we still just, I mean, it's still just like a basic fun revenge film. It definitely pulls no punches. This movie spawned a franchise, but I think the original is the best. I mean, it's a lean, very atmospheric film. The photography is so fantastic. Charles Bronson, of course, is in this star-making role. Bronson had been making films since like I think the late 50s, but like this is where he really like broke out. Um, Fun fact, I believe Bronson's first movie was a tiny bit role in House of Wax with
Oh,
Vincent Price. So
that's cool.
speaking of early roles, this is a very early role for Jeff Goldblum, who plays the scummiest villain uh of all time. Like
Nice.
he's in it for maybe like 3 or 4 minutes, but it's like chef's kiss. So yeah, this is such a fun movie. I know I say fun, it is, there are some like very heavy subject matter, but I think like Michael Winner like really does a good job of not bogging you down into such a bleak film. even though again it's very nihilistic in its worldview. And I mean, certainly the movie kind of hits a little bit different, like now versus when I last watched it. So, if stuff with gun violence obviously makes you uncomfortable, this is not a movie for you. But if you can kind of separate art from reality and just enjoy a revenge film, Death Wish is fantastic. I'm so happy this came out. The 4K looks really incredible. This is another one from the original 35 camera negatives. And the colors really pop. There's a lot of like nighttime scenes that I think really kind of benefit from this new transfer. Like there's a lot of like detail. Again, especially during the night scenes where like a lot of stuff kind of popped out at me that didn't necessarily on like my what I think maybe I saw this last time on DVD. So huge step up, obviously. Colors really pop. Kino does such a fantastic job of like not overworking or over processing their 4Ks, so you still get that nice naturalistic kind of grainy kind of like film texture, which is like definitely what you want from something like Death Wish, which is like a big budget grindhouse film. So very much worth checking out. I like that they have some new features with it, like the commentary track, which I believe is new. Forgive me if that's not true, but you get it anyways, and it's great. So definitely worth getting.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one that's been on my list for a long time. So whenever I heard it was getting like a proper 4K release, I was like, now's the time. Now I get to watch it. So very excited to pick that one up. I also did my best to end with a bang. There are some rocky moments within this, but overall, a top tier release. I kind of talked about it a little bit on our holiday gift guide, but I wanted to give it a proper spotlight. And that is the third season of Night Gallery from Kino Classics. So they are finishing off the series, which they started releasing at the latter part of 2021, and they have finally concluded here. So this is 2-disc. Yes, 2-disc. So you get this here and just like a little small booklet. It just kind of like lists all the episodes. And so this season is 15 episodes, and you might be like, oh, 15 episodes on 2 discs, that must be terrible. This is not an hour long like the previous 2 seasons. There was some kind of creative hiccups going on behind the scenes with this one. The network made them cut it to 30-minute shows, and then they also wanted them to kind of like tone down some of the more like macabre, like dark elements, which thankfully they didn't really do the second part of that. They still kind of stuck to what worked for the most part. But like I think most fans will agree who have like seen the series that the third season is the weakest. I'll just freely admit that it is the weakest, but that doesn't mean it's not worth watching. There are still a lot of really great things in here. And it's interesting that on your last one, you mentioned Vincent Price because he stars in probably the best episode of this season. So it's like right off the bat, you get Vincent Price, and it's a really, really fun episode and might be worth the price of admission alone for him. But then you also have people like Sally Field, Leonard Nimoy, Mickey Rooney, a lot of good people in this one. So yeah, overall, there's a mixed bag of quality. There are some that are kind of boring, admittedly, but like this is Rod Serling. He still had a lot of gas in the tank. He still had a lot of interesting ideas, even if some of them didn't come like completely like cohesively. Still a really good season of television, and like if you're a Night Gallery fan, you owe it to yourself to at least just like finish off this collection. Do a really good job. And as per usual, as with the past 2 seasons, the quality is great. These have all been remastered 2K scans of the inner positives, and this is loaded with special features. There are 15 episodes and 25 audio commentary tracks. So that means every episode gets an audio commentary track, a lot of them too. So they're really killing it. There's the third part of this long running documentary that there's first part it was on the first season, second part was on the second season, and then you have the concluding part. It's called the syndication conundrum. So they kind of like go into just giving you background history of like where the networks were at with the like this third season, kind of like all the behind the scenes drama, all that. It's great. I love that they did this for this release. So this is just jam packed full of special features, and with this being just a 2 disc release, it's not super expensive right now either. So the first season and third season are like much cheaper than the second season, which the second season is worth it because it has a lot more episodes and disc. But like overall, I recommend the whole series. Third season did not disappoint. I love Rod Serling. I have all of Twilight Zone on Blu-ray as well. So just like all the anthology, like great anthology series, just bring it on. I want Alfred Hitchcock presents next. That's what I want. So make it happen, Kino. So yeah, just pick it up if you're a fan for sure.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, that is definitely a really interesting series and one that I've like really come to more appreciate with these re-releases. So that is definitely, I think, kind of like makes a short list of some of the best releases of last year, and it's nice that we kind of have that series finished up. And I believe they're also like doing reissues of Outer Limits, which is pretty fun. So yeah, so I guess that kind of wraps up this episode. As always, we really appreciate any kind of comments, likes, shares, all that stuff really helps get these videos out to more eyeballs. And as always, thanks for hanging out with us.